Hello, one and all. Jasper here, joined by the greatest YouTuber I have ever come across, DJ Fella. Would you like to say anything about yourself before we get started?
Yeah, if you head over to my YouTube channel, you can see all my great videos that I put out.
They're just all in the back burner right now. It's only a matter of time. The first one he releases, it's going to be 1,000,000 views. I know it.
We'll see. We'll see if anything ever crops up over there.
But anyways, a couple days ago, the first episode of Hot D Season 2 came out. Now, I think most of my fans are aware of how my opinion has changed about the first season. When we finished it off, I was kind of like saying, it was 6 out of 10. At least it wasn't as bad as the ending for Game of Thrones, which a lot of people were expecting. But over the months and the year, I should say, my opinion on the show has steadily declined. I don't think, and objectively speaking, I don't think it's the worst thing ever put onto television by a long shot. But because of my, what's the word I'm looking for? My involvement in this, not involvement in the series, but just because of how attached I am to the world and the franchise, I'm much more critical of it. And so I think, like, right now, if you were to ask me, I'd give it at best a 5, like, say it's average, if I didn't want to get in a fight with someone. But I think I'm more leaning towards like a 4 out of 10, just because the issues that I have with it boggle my mind in who thought it was a good idea to keep them in. They weren't like little mistakes that I noticed on a second or third watch. They were like the big ones, the things I noticed at the very start. And then it just seeped in and started living rent free in my head.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. I feel like from my point of view, over time, looking back on the season, uh, as usual, I was completely correct always in my first take.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nothing's really changed for me. I don't remember what score I gave it
So
originally.
originally, we talked a little bit about it, but then we did the recording. And I think, and I feel guilty about this, I talked you up to a 6 out of 10 with me.
Is that true?
I think so. I mean, you can go back and watch the fucking episode. I'm not going to do that. It was dog shit. But that, I think that's roughly what I did. But I remember going in, like, I think you were like at 4 or 5 out of 10, and I was like, 6, because I think I was blinded by Patty Constantine. And now I think I'm thoroughly like in your camp. You were right. I had rose tinted glasses. So now, and now I'm a little worried I might be overcorrecting in this second season, because now I feel like I'm like really looking at shit to hate now. But we can get into that once we're going scene by scene.
Yeah, I feel like going into this season, my expectations are actually a lot more reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
Like going into the first season, at least with like the first episode, I had pretty low expectations just because the last season of Game of Thrones was so bad. But after seeing some of the early episodes, like and really seeing the potential that everything had, with like they had so many great actors, the production values, of course, great as always. I think I started to get a little bit of an expectation of like, oh, this could be something great, which might have led me to be more critical of it. But now I'm back down to like, okay, they're not capable of making something truly great. The best we can hope for is like a pretty decent show. So I feel like I've got my expectations set a lot more clearly this time, and I think that'll make things a little bit more fair for the show going forward.
That's fair enough. I want to push back a little bit on you that they're not capable of doing anything great, because I think clearly they are. And the one character I'll point to in saying that they can do fucking amazing work is Viserys. Viserys is the closest they got to a perfect character in my eyes. And a lot of my issues with Viserys are entirely subjective rather than objective. But like, it's because of him. It's because of him I have some hope. I know there's at least one fucking writer who knows what the hell he's doing.
Yeah, but I
Now,
don't think that they're gonna. be capable of bringing that level of talent together in a whole coherent project.
You're probably right. But with that, we've kind of laid our thoughts out that even though I'm a very big A Song of Ice and Fire fan, I'm not the biggest Hot D fan. But now we can delve into the first episode. You giving your non-book opinion vibes, me giving my book opinion vibes. And I think the best way we can kind of start this is, what are your thoughts on the new opening scene, the new opening credits?
I think it's quite a bit better than last season.
I think so too. It feels more unique. Like, obviously,
For
the
sure.
first one was very reminiscent on the original Game of Thrones trilogy.
Exactly.
It was more hyper focused to King's Landing, but it was very similar. It wasn't like it wasn't like a copy and paste by any means, but there was clearly some influence there. This one, it's again the same, but because it's yarn being woven into like a tapestry, it gives off the same kind of feel as it's slowly created and builds up. But because of how they do it, it feels like a whole new unique thing and much more of a different show. Like, it now they're kind of drifting a little bit more away from Game of Thrones and kind of trying to make Hot D its own thing.
For sure. And I think it fits really well with the fact that Hot D is a prequel. Because in my mind, when I think of tapestries, I think of the like depictions of great historical events.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because this is a prequel to the original series, I think a tapestry is a fantastic way to kind of tie the whole series together.
Yeah, and this tapestry, it's not just like hinting at elements that the show or the time that's going to be tackled, but it is actually showing the history of it. The first thing that jumped up to mind is you do see the first thing you see, like the fall of Valyria, if I recall correctly. You kind of see Aegon's conquest. The first thing that really jumped out to me, because it was a little less generic, was a particular king, Maegor the Cruel, being dead on the throne. That's historically relevant. And then it just kind of keeps going. So not only is it fit more with the theme of this being a prequel, but it actually does tell us the history of Westeros.
I'm pretty impressed that you know anything that's going on in that tapestry. I was just like, cool colors, dragons, fire, whoa.
Now, there's definitely some deeper stuff into it, but overall, I do greatly approve of this opening. I do think it is both visually and like going a bit more into the visual aspects of it. I love the yarn just going in and out all together. It's like a wave or a this doesn't sound super positive, or a disease that's like spreading. It's just I like it. I do really like this intro. I might think it's better than the original Game of Thrones intro, but I don't know. That's a pretty high bar. I'd have to stew on this one a little bit longer.
The original Game of Thrones intro, part of like what makes it so awesome for me is not having read the books. It's one of the only things in that show that makes like all the locations that you're constantly having thrown in your face understandable. Like, if you just watch the opening, you can be like, oh, okay, this is where people are. So it's not just an opening that's setting the tone in the original series. It's also providing useful information for understanding the show and what's going on. So in that sense, I think it surpasses. It's a better opening than this one, but this one is really good still.
That's a really good point. Maybe it's because I've just become more and more knowledgeable about the setting and lore and characters. I mean, I wasn't a book reader when I first started, and I think season 4 or 5 had just finished airing when I first started, and then I read the books soon after. But yeah, that's a good point, that if you're not a book reader, it can be a bit harder to know where everything is. So yeah, that's fair points. But back to Hot D, though. We now are getting kind of a, and it surprised me a little bit, just kind of a narration from Craig and Stark in regards to how the Stark family, and possibly other nobility families, but this seems to be more specifically the Starks, have a tradition of drawing lots to see who's sent to the wall. And any particular thoughts about this?
Is this still is this was not the practice in the time of Game of Thrones, correct? Like Jon Snow didn't get sent because of this. Jon Snow just went because he was a bastard and didn't have anything else going on.
Yes, you are correct. There is no mention that I'm personally aware of. Maybe there's like some fourth book that George randomly published that talks about this, but there is no lottery for the Starks to send a men. And it's kind of just a useless bit that doesn't really affect or change anything, and I don't even find it that good because the whole thing about the North is that even at the lowest point, they still respect the Night's Watch. And because of that, you still have nobility who gives up everything they have to go serve at the Night's Watch. A prime example being Jeor Mormont, the father of Jorah Mormont, who gives up his title as Lord of Bear Island and just becomes the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Others, like including a Mallister and a Royce. So even at the lowest point that we've ever seen the Night's Watch, it's still held in somewhat of a practical regard. Specifically, northern houses, southerns don't care about it. So it seems weird that you would need to have a lottery to send someone over there to make sure that it's properly garrisoned and whatnot. And
yeah, you would hope you would just have enough volunteers going at all times.
And to be fair, like at this point in history, the Night's Watch isn't as decayed and a shit show as the original series, because this is 150 years, give or take. I'm rounding up, from Aegon's conquest, and ever since Aegon's conquest, the wall had been deteriorating in manpower, funding, all that stuff. So, but it's still, half strength. It's still somewhat like a prominent force. So if at the lowest of the low, we still see nobility going in and unaware of like just how shit it is, you'd think at half strength, it'd still get like a decent amount of nobility. I'm sure a lot wouldn't be too thrilled about it. But yeah, it just seems a little off to do this specifically with the Starks, because they're one of the highest, best supporters of the Night's Watch. And also, they also make this dumb thing with like, it's not a punishment. It's a reward. It's an honor. And I'm like, okay, that's bullshit. Because if it's an honor...
Yeah, why are you pulling lots then?
Yeah, unless they want us to believe, so many Stark guys are trying to join the Night's Watch that to keep them all from joining, we force them to take this lot at the beginning of every winter, which also a dick move to send them to the wall when winter's getting started. Because that's the worst time to be at the fucking wall. At least wait till after winter to send them when it's a little bit nicer.
So I take it from the way you're talking about this that this is not in the books at all.
Not at all. And it's not a great change, but I think it's like, what's the word? It's a symptom of the disease. It's a change that didn't need to be there. They probably thought it sounded cool, and so they stuffed it in without putting a whole lot of thought into it. At the same time, though, it's technically not lore-breaking, because luckily, Eddard Stark's brother was sent to the Night's Watch. Why, we don't know. Maybe it was because of this stupid-ass lottery. But having this in, it's not super contradictive. I'm just not a big fan of it.
Understandable. Understandable.
But now we get to see Jace speaking with Cregan Stark, the Lord of the North. So this is pretty much Hot D's version of Eddard. And I have to say, looks-wise...
Oh, so this guy is the Lord of the North, not the commander of the Night's Watch?
He is the Lord of the North. He is pretty much Eddard Stark in Hot D times.
Oh, okay. I assumed he was talking to the commander of the Night's Watch because he was up at the wall.
Yeah, it's weird that they're at the wall a little bit because of how pressing time is. In the books, they're at Winterfell. They're having this meeting and the discussion, and they're going over it at Winterfell. So I'm assuming in the show's continuity, Cregan Stark was already at the wall, maybe just checking on it or whatever. And so Jace made it to Winterfell, heard that, Cregan wasn't there, and then went to wall to talk to him. That's probably it. Because it would be ludicrous for him to meet Cregan Stark at Winterfell and then go to the wall and have these conversations. Man, war's about to break out. Time is of the essence.
Yeah, so then what the hell does being prepared for winter have to do with him being able to send men? Because it seems like the wall should be independently staffed from the rest of the North. Like, the rest of the North should still have their own armies that they can contribute.
Yeah, but technically, the job of the Warden of the North, which would be Cregan Stark, is to defend Westeros from wildling incursions. The Night's Watch, also does that duty. It's a bit of overlap between the two. Yeah. But the Night's Watch is its own thing. It doesn't have to answer to anyone. But obviously, the Night's Watch has always had a very strong connection with the Starks and Northern houses in general on the culture and location and whatnot.
Okay. And then one concern I had with the bastard being up at the wall right now is the timeline of things, because it seems like his brother's been eaten recently enough that his mom is still out searching for the body, and not a lot has been done about it since. Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering, I'm not sure how long it takes to get to the wall on a dragon.
I mean, Daenerys did it pretty fast in Game of Thrones.
Daenerys, I think everyone agrees she teleported. It's my concern. I got a little bit of teleporty vibes, not just from him being at the wall, but also how quickly he gets back from it. But we can worry about that when that comes up. Yep. Just something that was on my mind.
So it would definitely be a long trip. I'm trying to remember. I don't know exactly the distances as well as like the speed a dragon will travel. I know it's a big.
Well, and he's also got a really small dragon.
Yeah, it's right? It's not a big boy. It's no Drogon. It's no Drogon. But if I remember correctly, I think someone said in the original Game of Thrones that for Daenerys to get to the wall as fast as she did, she would have to go the speed of a modern airline plane. Which means that she was holding on to Drogon by his scales as he went that fast over the lands of Westeros, which is ridiculous. I'm a little bit more forgiving of it because one could assume that as far as Rhaenyra finding the body, looking for it in her mourning, that whole process had been a few days. So, whereas we know Daenerys had to have gotten there in less than a day. It's possible that Jace was a much longer trip that took a week or so.
Right. The other thing to keep in mind is he stopped by the Eyrie on the way.
Yes, he stopped. Correct? He stopped by the Vale, and then he stopped at this Three Sisters, which I don't understand the importance of the sisters. It's mentioned every once in a while, but it's I don't know why there's such a fixation of it in the lore-wise. But anyways, then he stops at White Harbor, and then he stops at Winterfell in the books. So one could presume that it was a similar trek in the show from the books. They just didn't go into super exact detail on it, which I think is fair enough. I don't think we needed to see the full trip and him discussing with every single person he came across. Though I would say the Vale would be a prominent person to talk to because that's the Vale. That's one of the 7 kingdoms. But, fair enough. It doesn't have as much interesting stuff in the books. It's in the books, it's the paramour, not the paramour, the regent of the Vale is the mother of the Lord of the Vale, who's a child at that point. And apparently, according to Mushroom, she decides to fight for the Blacks because Jace sleeps with her. Nobody really believes that, though.
Oh, Mushroom's the midget.
Mushroom is the midget, who I hope we get to see in the second season, but I don't think that's a likelihood.
Yeah, I don't think we're getting Mushroom. I think we would have seen him already.
Yeah. Now, getting a little bit off the books, though, I want to ask, what are your thoughts on the actor for Cregan Stark?
He seems young.
Mm-hmm. I actually like that, because the thing about the books, in the books, everyone is quite a bit younger, in general.
Yeah.
And they aged up a lot of characters. In most cases, and I'm mostly okay with that just because of some of the scenes that take
Yeah.
place in the franchise. I'm fine with
Mhm.
it. But he's not much older than Jace. Like, I think it's like, like kind of the age gap between me and you. I think we're talking like 3, maybe 5 years. So they're both like young men at the very
Yeah.
least. So I'm actually, like, looks wise, I'm actually okay with the actor. I don't need, like, I know when you go onto the Wikipedia page for Kragan Stark, he's a big guy with a massive beard and whatnot. But I think that's just like people, and especially with how he presents himself in the series, he just feels like a much older character.
Mhm.
I'm not a fan of the acting behind Kragan Stark, though.
You weren't a fan of the acting?
I was not. It
Because
was.
I was about to say that I think he does a decent job of appearing, despite the fact that he doesn't look much older. The way he carries himself, he does seem more mature than Jace.
I just think he just is so monotone. He doesn't have any, like, when I look back to the original Game of Thrones seasons, like, and some people defend this, saying, like, he's a stern, gloomy character that's kind of like the stereotype of the Starks. But
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
yeah,
Every Stark is like that.
but I would push back against that. I think, for example, Eddard Stark was, a fairly stern, gloomy character, but he had fluctuations in his voice. He showed a little bit of hint of emotion, like here and there. I mean, and granted, it's a short scene, and I don't want to bash the actor too
I was about
much,
to say that.
but it's just like there's nothing there for me. He does not change anything. He maybe gives a smirk at one point in the talks, but I'm just not impressed with this guy's acting.
Yeah, I think you're judging too soon.
I don't know. I think Kit Harington, Sean Bean. I think most of like the Stark actors from the original, like the male Stark actors, did a better job than this guy.
From this one scene we've seen, possibly, but also like at least like Sean Bean he's a great actor. So I'm not expecting everybody in the show to be putting on a Sean Bean performance.
Maybe we'll see. We'll see if he comes back for later scenes and whatnot. He's kind of the most important character, like not the most important character, but like the ratio of his importance to screen time is going to be interesting. I feel like they're probably going to give him a lot more to work with in future seasons, or even maybe this season. But we'll see. But anyway, so yeah, wasn't the biggest fan, but maybe I am judging a little too harshly too early.
I will say in this dialogue, an interesting thing is said. He says that when the dragons had gone to the wall before, they refused to cross it.
Yes.
Is that book canon or is that show stuff?
It's a little bit tweaked, but yes, it is book canon. He says that both King Jaehaerys and his queen Alysanne flew to the wall and then refused to cross it. It was actually only Alysanne who went to the wall, and her dragon refused to cross it. And she played it off as like, and none of the Starks were there, I believe. I think it was just the Night's Watch. And she just plays it off as just like, oh, she's just tired from the long trip, yada, yada, yada. But she was actually genuinely like disturbed that the dragon refused to cross the wall. And
so this, I don't know what the timeline, I mean, I assume these books came out before season 8 or season 7 of Game of Thrones, right?
Yes, so it was already documented. So Daenerys going over the wall it was more bullshit than you realize.
Yeah, that's just another dig on Game of Thrones. That's fun. It's fun that continues to get worse as I learn more about Game of Thrones.
Oh boy, don't get me started. We'll be here for hours and hours. Getting back to the scene itself, though, and I actually do touch on those inconsistencies because I actually just uploaded my video on the differences between this episode and the books. So you can check that out after this. But getting back to the scene itself, they also cut out and jump over a lot of things. Like, what would you say is the motivation for why the Starks decided to side with the Blacks?
Not a clue. I have no clue. They don't talk about that at all.
So there's a little bit about it. Jace says, it's about keeping the realm united, honor and
but
duty.
But either side could say that stuff.
Yeah,
Either side has equal claim to all of that.
yes. There is a strong correlation with that. Um, in the books, it's a bit more complicated. There's hints that Kragan gets to liking Jace because he reminds him so much of a younger brother who passed away. Another is that Jace fell in love with one of Kragan's half sisters and was actually secretly wedded to them. Those are just rumors, though. Not a lot of speculation. Like, one of them is specifically from Mushroom, I think. So, not a whole lot of people consider that in high regard. But something that we do know is a pact that they signed called the Pact of Fire and Ice. And it was pretty much that if Jace was to have a daughter, then that daughter would be betrothed to one of Kragan's sons. I think specifically his eldest. So, there was a little more like political maneuvering to get the Starks in. It wasn't just family duty, honor, or anything like that.
Yeah, I hope that kind of stuff comes up at some point later, because that seems important.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, and also, so here's kind of the thing. We were talking a little bit about the time frames and whatnot as far as travel goes, and you were saying, it felt like, he kind of got to the wall pretty quickly. And I'm thinking, since we have the gap between season 1 and season 2, as well as we see that the mom could possibly have been looking for the dragon and son's corpse for several days, it's not unreasonable. A raven getting to him, though, to let him know that his son had died, far less reasonable. Immensely less reasonable.
Yeah, we've been shown, I feel like at some point we've been shown that dragons can outrun ravens. Like if you send a raven and a dragon at the same time, the dragon will arrive first.
Well, I mean, if we're going by Game of Thrones logic, Daenerys got that raven pretty damn fast, and then she got there pretty fast. So maybe it's comparable. But I'm thinking most likely a dragon would be significantly faster than Jace, than a raven. So so for a raven to make it to the wall to notify him about his brother's death, he would have had to have stayed at the wall for several days, which isn't an impossibility because
or he stayed somewhere along the way, like at the Eyrie. He might have stayed there for a little while negotiating with them.
Maybe that's the thing. I guess without like a proper sheet of how long all this took place, it's harder to say. But I don't know. That was something I kind of picked up on, and it's not a big thing, but it's just like one of those actually moments.
Yeah, which to add on to the actually, it also seems unlikely that they would even send a raven to the wall. Why would they assume he's gone to the wall? So the raven would probably have to go to Winterfell, and then I guess from there they would send it to the wall.
I believe that's how mostly the raven system goes. You don't just have a bunch of ravens for each specific location.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But maybe to a certain point, but I would imagine like you have ravens that are trained to fly to like some of the nearest points of interest, like the castles, the lords, the cities. And then from there, that maester takes that note and passes on to the next place and and that's kind of how news travels. That would be my assumption. It's either that or they are trained to go to all these really specific locations and the ravens like stop and rest at intervals until they make it. But as far as a raven going to Castle Black itself, that's reasonable because this is big news. Even if the Night's Watch has no say or part in the wars to come and all that nonsense, they still kind of care about it. Like when Jon Snow was at the Night's Watch, a raven came telling him about his father's death and then came and talked about his brother's death and all that stuff. So news still gets to the wall.
Yeah, but I was assuming that raven was specifically sent for Jace to inform him.
I didn't get that. I think that would be a bit too specific because if that's the case, then Kragan Stark's a bit of a dick because he was the one who read it first.
Well, yeah, but he's standing right next to Jace, so I assume he passed it. I assume he passed it along.
Most likely. But anyways, with that scene done, we then jump over to Rhaenys flying into Dragonstone on her dragon.
Yes, and this seems like as good a time as any for me to ask for a little bit of a refresher. How many dragons are at play right now?
So, it's hard to say because the official Game of Thrones, the official HBO website that kind of shows the family tree, it has some characters in it that have yet to make an appearance. So they should exist and they should have dragons at this point. Like here, I'll just tell you. So for the Greens, there is like Aegon, Aemond, and Helena. But there's actually a fourth child named Darren, I believe. And Darren is a dragon rider, and he is supposed to be in Old Town right now, just kind of chillaxing because of the close connection with the High Towers that obviously the Greens have. And
right.
In the official HBO family tree, he's on the family tree. But he hasn't been mentioned at all. He hasn't been cast. So I am very, very skeptical on if he will actually be in the show. Because I think originally when Game of Thrones was airing, you remember the Tyrells, Loras Tyrell and Marjorie Tyrell, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the books, they actually have two older brothers. And those older brothers were also on the tree because HBO has been doing this for a decent amount of time now. But eventually, they were just cut. So I think it's very likely that Darren's not going to make it into the show. So right now, the Greens, I think, technically have 3 dragon riders, being Aegon, Aemond, and Helena. But effectively, they have 2 fighting dragon riders, Aegon and Aemond.
Yeah. Is cutting a whole ass dragon rider not a big deal?
If it was a black, I would be more understanding, because the blacks actually do get quite a handful of dragons with a little act they have later. But I think with the Greens, it's a little bit more wonky, but they might be changing things around. They might be like having some dragon riders switch sides, which I wouldn't be a fan of, because just cut the guy you were switching and instead have Darren be a part of the Greens. But yeah, so right now, but the thing that's keeping the Greens safe is they have one of the biggest. They have Vhagar, which you don't want to fuck with.
Well, and the only other big dragon doesn't have a rider, right?
Yeah, that would be Vermithor.
And they don't know where he is.
They know where Vermithor is, but Vermithor does not have a dragon rider at this point. They have the dragon, they don't have a rider for him.
Okay. So we've got 3 confirmed riders on the Greens, and then the blacks have how many?
So the blacks have Daemon, obviously. They have Rhaenys. They have Rhaenyra. They have Jace. So that's 4 dragon riders. Joffrey technically has a dragon as well, but it's a bit of a little baby, obviously. I mean, Joffrey's like, I don't know how old at this point, like 5 or 6 or some shit.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't count him on doing any big battles. And the Velaryon twins, I think one of them is a dragon rider as well. Roughly probably the size and experience as Jace. So that's technically 5 dragon riders that they have. Though really the only ones that would be dangerous would be Daemon and Rhaenys. And maybe Rhaenyra. It depends on what they're going to do with her in the season.
Okay, so pretty evenly matched then, as far at this point in the show.
I would say so, realistically.
All right, then let's get back to it.
Yeah, so we have the scene where Rhaenys comes back from patrolling the blockade to make sure that it doesn't get fucking burned down all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
And Daemon comes in and just is like, come on, bitch, ride up. We're heading to King's Landing to fuck some shit up.
Yeah, we gotta get a little revenge.
Mm-hmm. And now, I'm conflicted about this scene because he's right that it's a good idea for both him and Rhaenys to go take on Vhagar, a 2v1 fight, because 1v1 is going to be too dangerous for them to pull off.
For sure.
Yeah. Here's my issue with this, though. It's not just Vhagar that is at King's Landing. There's also Aegon and Sunfire. So I
That's true. But I guess his plan was to like get Vagar while he was out doing something. While he was at the grocery store or something.
maybe, but it's obviously like they plan to like try and double team Vagar. And I know by comparison, Aegon is not as much of a threat as Vagar. He's still a threat, obviously, but if Aegon was to engage with Daemon or Rhaenys 1v1, my money would be on Daemon or Rhaenys, not Aegon. But to completely ignore him is a little crazy because debatably he's probably like the fourth or maybe the fifth most dangerous dragon rider right now. Which, I mean, doesn't sound like all that impressive when you realize there's only 10 dragon riders or so. But still, ignoring him outright seems like a grave tactical.
Well, and even if the
negligence.
rider isn't doing anything or present, like another dragon in the fight is kind of a big deal.
Yeah. And that's kind of the big thing, because Sunfire is pretty popular. Sunfire is a beautiful golden dragon. I hope we get to see him soon. What am I saying? I know we'll get to see him soon, but I'm looking forward to seeing him. But yeah, so it seemed a little odd for Daemon to not bring up Aegon and Sunfire at all in his plan to go kill Vagar. It's smart that he wants to go kill Vagar, but I hope there's like a bit more to it than just flying over to King's Landing, because that likely would not end super well for them.
Yeah. I don't know. That kind of impulsive, not fully thought out decision seems pretty in character for Daemon.
Yeah, he's definitely not the most rational of Targaryens. But as far as the scene itself, they have a little bit of a back and forth. And overall, I really enjoyed this scene. This isn't like book canon, but it's not contradicting to anything. So overall, I think it's like a nice little scene that they added.
Yeah, I also enjoyed it. And I think that these two are a couple of the like better characters in the show. So
I mean,
they have fun back and forth.
They're probably the most polar opposite for me. I either love them or I hate them. It just depends on the scene they're currently in. Like,
well, I often hate Daemon. I find myself hating him, but you know, he's one of those characters you love to hate.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, as far as enjoyment I get from these characters, I either get my enjoyment or I don't. It depends on the scene. Because Daemon has some of the best lines and scenes, but he also has some of the worst. And Rhaenys, she's currently the owner of the worst scene in the show so far.
That is true. She did do the craziest shit on the planet last season. I forgot about that a little bit.
Yeah, that fucking dragon pit.
Yeah, I kind of just wiped that from my memory. You know, sometimes you gotta do that when you're watching Game of Thrones in 2024. You gotta just wipe whole scenes from your memory.
I mean, I can't remember the author's name, but I remember that there was a guy who said, you know, if you're watching something or reading something, you're allowed to like cut one thing out and pretend it didn't happen or doesn't exist in the story.
Which, if you're doing that for season 1, it's got to be the dragon pit scene. That's got to be the scene you delete. Which, unfortunately, they do bring it up in this conversation, so it does make it hard to forget about.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad they're bringing it up, though, because I know it's a shit scene, but it's an important shit scene. You can't just ignore it. You can't pretend it never happened.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think we're going to be able to comment a whole lot on this next scene, but we have Rhaenyra, these fucking names, Rhaenyra looking over, and I think, I might be wrong, I think she's staring at Storm's End. The castle.
Yeah, that would make sense for her to be near Storm's End.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know, like, I think, like, when it comes to the acting from Emma, she's great. I don't care much for her character of Rhaenyra, but particularly in this episode, even though she only has one fucking line, I think she does an amazing job.
I will say the one note I took on this scene is, damn, bitch be looking like she's bringing winter.
She's the makeup is on point with her. Like, she looks depressed. She looks disheveled. She looks mad. She looks more mad and crazy than Daenerys did when she went off the land. So it's beautiful. I love it.
That's true. She's showing more emotion in this one scene than Emilia Clarke managed to put into all of season 8.
Yeah. While I like Emilia Clarke, I don't think she's she's definitely not one of the better actors from the original series.
Well, and to be fair to her, she was working with some rough stuff.
Yeah. Oh boy. Like, she was great at the beginning. Now, the next one is we see some guys cleaning off a boat. I think it's like specifically the flagship to the Valarians, which is why Corlys is kind of coming out to check on that shit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I feel like for you, this scene is a bit of a nothing burger. But I'd like to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, the only note I took is vaguely racist. I was just wondering, so did they try to explain the race swap at all?
No. The Valarians have just always been black, according to
They've just always been black.
Mm-hmm.
So then who are all the other black people in this scene? Is there a black island that they're all from or something?
So
are there just black people all over the place now?
So as far as the show goes, I think there's just black people all over the place. Granted, when it comes to the locations, when it comes to diversity, for example, we'll later see a few black characters in King's Landing. That makes some okay sense because King's Landing is the capital of Westeros. A lot of people traveling, a lot of people in there. So it makes sense that there would be black characters reasonably in King's Landing. There's a few in the books. They're not quite as numerous as the show, but like that's not too bad. Dragonstone is probably in a little bit of a similar situation because of how close it is to King's Landing. But
well, and it's a port. So
yeah.
I guess I would expect some more diversity.
Well, a lot of it depends on where they are. We're not quite sure where they are. If it's Driftmark, that would make more sense because Driftmark is a very popular place for ships to land and trade goods and whatnot. If it's Dragonstone, it's less so clear. It's less justifiable because Dragonstone is not a very popular place to go. Honestly, it's kind of a shit place. The only good thing about it is that it's like where Aegon the Conqueror started his invasion almost.
Yeah.
All right. But so you were thinking were you looking at this bald guy and thinking, is this a fucking Valerian or something like that?
Well, I wasn't sure if like maybe he traveled with the Valerians, but there's also a lot of extras in the background that are black. So I wasn't sure if this was just like if it's just Westeros is now extremely diverse, or if there's some feasible explanation for it.
Yeah, I mean, they don't put any effort into it in regards to justifying the race swaps and whatnot. Like I said, I have a video where I show how easily they could have done it, and they didn't even do the bare minimum on that. The Valarians have just always been black. Now, I'm not going to...
Yeah, I think that's why I'm confused. I think I watched your video and then mentally like headcanoned that on accident as the reason why they made him black.
I wish that was, but the funny, I don't want to try and spoil too much, but anyways, this character that we're introduced to, Alan, he's fairly important, and I will at the very least say, in the show's continuity, it makes sense why he's black.
Okay.
Like
fair enough.
If you were to take any of the justifications that I used to make the Valarians black in one way or the other, with the exception of turning all Valerians back and just owning it, like Corlys is half black from his mother's side or something, or I think I had a middle reason, but I can't remember. But anyways, if you take those, then yes, it makes sense for this character to be black.
Okay. Understandable.
Yeah. But
yeah, and I mean, I feel like personally, I am kind of over. Like, okay, they did the race swap. That's its own set of issues. I'm going to try and with season 2 just be like, okay, these characters are what they are now.
Yeah, I mean, you can only beat that dead horse for so long. I will say though, what I found hilarious though, because This character in the books obviously is not white, is not black. He's white and he is Valerian. He has the usual features. He's white. He's very pale with the silver blonde hair, and I think he also has purple eyes. But don't hold me accountable to that. But when I was watching this scene, before we even got his name, I was just looking back and forth between him and Corlys, and I'm like, this guy's bald. I bet if he grew it out, he'd have white hair. This guy's totally a Velaryon. And then they said his name, and I laughed.
Oh, so he's supposed to be like visibly related. Like you're supposed to be able to look at him and be like, "Oh, this guy's related."
Yes.
Okay, because I did not assume he was like related at all. I just assumed he was like a random crew member.
Nah. He is supposed to be related to the Velaryon family.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's just another example of quote unquote muddying the waters.
I mean, at this point, yeah, we kind of got to look at every black character and be like, I wonder if that's a Velaryon now.
Yeah, is this just a random black cast or is this relevant? I don't know.
But yeah.
Well,
but anyways, pretty much this scene serves as introducing Alan. Alan of Hull.
okay. And he got a dagger that was supposed to be for his son.
Yeah, his grandson. Yeah.
Oh, his grandson.
Yeah, it was for Lucerys. Luke.
Oh, I know him as Luke. I'm pretty close with him, so we just call him Luke. I didn't realize he was called Lucerys.
Yeah, that whole dagger thing, it's never mentioned in the books. Obviously, it's not a change that really matters that much. There's something beautiful they could do with it, but that would be getting like too much into spoilers. But like overall, as far as the scene introducing a character that's probably going to be more prominent in the future, it was okay.
Yeah, I think that if he'd had white hair, at least I would have paid more attention. Like I would have been like, okay, this guy's probably fairly relevant.
Mm-hmm.
As it was, I just kind of didn't really know what was going on.
Anywho, the next scene, I don't think there's really anything to comment about. You see Eric, I think is Team Black. Eric, I think is Team Green. But you see him walking around the Red Keep. There's a dragon coming, but they get ready to shoot it, but they realize it's Vhagar. I don't think there's really anything to comment on that.
So, I was under the impression when I watched the original series that the Scorpions were a relatively new invention.
No.
They've had Scorpions forever?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That was just
fair enough.
That was again Game of Thrones being retarded. Qyburn did not invent Scorpions. In fact, one of Aegon the Conqueror's sisters was killed because of Scorpions in Dorne.
Oh, so the show did imply that Scorpions were a new invention. I'm not crazy. It's just that's just another thing the show did badly.
Yes. You could make the argument that after all the dragons died, Scorpions were not nearly as prevalent. And so Qyburn just kind of reintroduced it to Cersei's like, this shit will fuck them up. And then it proceeds to fail spectacularly at King's Landing. Does amazing when they had to take on 2 dragons, but they got shit on in the second battle.
Yeah, when you mount those things to boats, they get crazy accurate.
But anyways, yeah, so Westeros has, at least for the past 300 years, has had Scorpions.
Okay. Yeah, I guess maybe you could justify like he read about him in a history book because nobody had to use them for a long time. And so that's why he gets credit for him in the show. I guess you could steel man that.
Yeah, I think that's giving the writers too much credit, though.
I will say this whole scene to me, it gives off the vibes of like when the boss is around, so you act like you're doing your job right. But I bet those soldiers aren't preparing to shoot every time a dragon flies by. But most of the time they're like, it's one of our dragons. I'm not fucking gonna shoot that.
Most likely, but at the same time, you never know when the Blacks are going to just show up, because Dragonstone and King's Landing are close.
But you should never underestimate the laziness of the working man.
Never, ever. But yeah, so yeah, not a whole lot to comment on this scene. But I think the next scene is actually quite interesting. We get Helena doing her stitches or sewing or whatever they call it, and we have Aegon show up. And I don't know if it's because I kind of like the actor and the interviews that I've seen him in, but Aegon in this episode to me was quite a surprising treat.
I agree 100%. I really enjoyed him this episode.
And I think it all boils down to him having scenes, being able to eat up the scenes. Like, they're giving him better stuff to work with. In the first season,
sure.
He just didn't have that much. But now that he's the king, quote unquote, and is going to be much more prominent, I think now we're really going to really get a real enjoyment from this guy.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't watched the first season since it came out, so I'm a little bit fuzzy on his characterization in it, but he feels like a very different character as far as like the way he acts. Like I don't know, he was kind of like a edgy, like mom.
I mean,
kind of, you know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say?
He was quite the cunt.
Yeah, and this episode, he's very, he's pretty upbeat, kind of goofy. He does a fantastic job of showing what it'd be like if you put a fucking teenager in charge of a country.
Mm-hmm. I definitely really enjoyed it. And remember how we were talking about how, an audience member or a reader is allowed to cut one thing out from the story? The thing I'm cutting out for is like all of Aegon's fuckery in the first season. Like, okay, I'm cutting out that he's a rapist, and I'm cutting out that he watched his kids in the fighting pits, especially his bastard sons.
Oh, he did do that.
Yeah.
They did have that be a part of his character. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a completely different person from the guy in this episode. He's giving people sheep. He was trying to give people sheep for no reason.
Yeah, so even you could argue that continuity-wise, it's a bit iffy, but I greatly prefer this so far.
Yeah, he's a much more enjoyable character to watch. So this scene, what's the princess's name?
Helena.
Helena, she complains about being scared of the rats.
Yeah.
And they write it off, but I feel like at the very least they're aware that they have a rat problem. Seems like, I don't know, seems odd to be like, she's just crazy when there are rats everywhere.
I'd imagine like I can't really speak to the times. Like, I don't know how big of an issue rats were for medieval times, but maybe,
I mean, I think kind of one of the biggest issues ever when they caused the bubonic plague.
There hasn't been no bubonic plague here, though.
I'm just saying, I feel like people know rats aren't a good thing to have around. I mean, they've got people catching them.
Yeah, they do got people catching the rats, but since there has been no bubonic plague, I think fearing rats probably is not as common. But you're right.
Fair enough.
Being scared of rats probably, it's normal for, even us in modern days to, if we see a mouse or a rat, we jump on the chair and scream like a bitch.
Yeah, that's true.
So you're right. It seems kind of weird to be like, oh, she's scared of rats. How quirky, how weird. But
yeah.
But obviously she's scared of the rats because I think it's pretty much hinted at that she has prophetic dreams and whatnot.
Yeah, I felt like they basically confirmed that at some point last season. Mm-hmm. I don't remember exactly how.
I think it was that bullshit dragon scene. The floor is going to crack beneath us or some shit like that. She said something.
Oh, yeah, it's something like that. Yeah.
But overall, though, I think the scene is nice. It again hints at her having prophetic dreams, and it's building up to blood and cheese with the rat catcher and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty good scene. And again, that scene becomes a little bit better on rewatch because then you know it's coming.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and then we get this fucking scene. First time we see Alicent and Kristen in the season, and what the fuck is happening? We just see the Kingsguard cleaning Alicent's carpet.
Yeah, were they in a romantic relationship last season? I thought that they we're just kind of working together.
So it depends on what dumbass you ask. Because I watched this and I actually joined a group chat a little bit after in people from a kind of different YouTube channel. And one of them did say, like, oh, yeah, in season 1, there was sexual tension there. So it's not so surprising that they're hitting it off, which I think is 8 layers of bullshit. And also, I don't trust this person because I'm pretty sure they said that Kragan Stark and Jaehaerys Targaryen were having sexual tension at the wall. So I think they just want everyone on screen to have sex. So I don't trust that guy. But I don't remember any real sexual tension in the first season. And even if there was, this is quite the fucking leap.
Yeah. And it's just like, does Kristen ever learn? Like, you got burnt, bud. You got burnt so hard. Stop fucking the royalty, dog.
Yeah, and not to mention, this isn't even hinted at or rumored at in the books. And suffice it to say, I'm not a fan of this, especially because there's like no build-up. It's just these two hooking up for the pure want of sex. And I feel like for Alicent specifically, even more so than Kristen Cole, it's very out of character.
Yeah. Alicent, she's a pure maiden, basically. By Game of Thrones standards.
Well, and also by by Game of Thrones standards, she's pretty damn good. But also, she just never struck me as a character who would seek out sex. Like, she was in a relationship with Viserys. Some people call it rape. I hesitate to say they're wrong about that because, it's an arranged marriage, da-da-da-da-da. But, she was in a relationship where, she was expected to, constantly have sex whenever the king demanded it of her. And she's also in a way being sexually abused by Larys, however you pronounce it, when he wants to fucking jerk off to her feet. So it just seems weird for her character to seek out sex.
Yeah, it feels out of place for sure. To just I guess they just got to get their sexing in. This was the easiest way to do it.
I think that's legitimately the main motivation, is to make sure that this season has characters boinking so they can justify having sex.
Yeah. So then one thing that seemed odd in this scene is Alicent, whenever they're getting ready to go, she says, "We cannot again." Is she saying, we can't go to the small meeting, show up together or something like that?
I think she's specifically talking about sex.
We can't have sex again?
Yeah.
No, she can't. She can't be saying that.
Well, we know what happens later, but...
Yeah, she can't... That would be the quickest broken promise ever.
Yeah, I mean, you know how women are. They say one thing and do another. You can't trust them. But anyways, yeah, fuck that scene. Even more so than Kristen was tongue-fucking Alicent. I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah.
But
agreed.
Next scene, we get to see Cheese doing his job, working hard, stand-up guy. So
this guy's name is Cheese?
Their names have been lost to history.
Oh, so they just made up a name.
Yep, they're Blood and Cheese.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Understandable names for him.
With that said, it shows a bit more in his later scenes, but I really like the casting for Cheese, just because I don't know if they gave him the makeup or it's just his natural facial features or what, but he gives off rat vibes,
He is a little ratty.
We can talk more about that later, but anyways.
Yeah.
But now we get the small council scene, and not a whole lot to say. I think overall it's perfectly serviceable. I love Aegon, being happy and constantly looking at his son and whatnot. He feels like a kind of a good father. I love the shade that Otto keeps throwing at Rhaenyra. Or I'm sorry, not Alicent. Just the moment to end this quietly and quickly has passed. We've made mistakes in the past. We need not dwell on them. We must play the board in front of us. Like, just all the fucking shade he's throwing at her.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm on.
Well, and who's the guy that says an apology for her dead son?
That. Oh, you're going to laugh at this. That's Jasper.
Oh, that's Jasper.
Yeah, that's Jasper.
And who the fuck is Jasper?
Jasper, I believe, is the master of laws on the small council. He was in the last few episodes, I believe, of the first season.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of remember his face, but I don't really know who he is.
Yeah, he's the master of laws. I can't remember what lord or house he's from, but I think it's just one from King's Landing or something. He's reasonably prominent, but not super prominent. You could probably honestly get away with cutting him.
Yeah, but then he hits Alicent with an apology for her dead son.
You're right.
And now he's my favorite character.
He's got a good line. I mean, I like him because of the name. It's a good name, a strong name.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I do think this was great scenes. If I'm a bit conflicted a little bit about how menacing Aegon is to the Lannister. I'm drawing a blank on his name, but
it starts with a T. Thailand.
They all start with a fucking T. Tyrion, Tywin, Tydos. They all start with T. Jaime is the only fucker without a T.
Did you hear? It's Thailand.
Yeah, Tywin Lannister. So I don't know. Like, ironically, him being like very menacing to Thailand is in character, given what we've seen. Like, especially of his more bad side from the first season that I want to ignore. But because I choose to ignore it, I'm less of a fan of him being like super menacing, or at least I feel like that's how the scene gives it off, rather than like a teen who's kind of abusing his power in a funny, childish way. It comes off for like in a menacing, like, hey, give my son a ride or you die. You know, that's just kind of how it felt to me. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I think the vibe they were going for was more of what you said, a teen just kind of abusing his power in a goofy way. But I do agree, there is a little bit of an ominous tension to it.
Yeah, but, you know, overall, I think the characters that we got, they do great. Otto is my favorite in this scene because of all the smack talk, like the passive-aggressive tones he takes. Aegon's a close second. But yeah, I think this was all a real good scene.
Yeah. And Otto continues to be a great character.
Oh, Dabby, Dozy. And so the next one, this is a bit of a longer scene, so let's skip ahead a bit. They talk a little bit about tactics. Oh, I forgot, Aemon shows up. And
Aemon does show up.
Yeah, I gotta say, like, I understand it, but Alicent, like, not being a fan of Aemon being on the small council meeting, shut the fuck up, bitch. Like, I get it, you're not happy that Aemon killed Lucerys, but fuck off. He is the most powerful asset that you have. He needs to be there. Yeah,
it does seem odd that Aemon wouldn't just automatically be included in the small council. It also feels a little bit odd that Aemon's like big dick energy, like walks up and is like, here's how we need to handle things. It's like, you're fucking how old? Sit down and listen to the grown-ups talk, bud.
Well, to be fair, the actor's only 2 years younger than his mother, so.
The actress for Alicent?
Yeah, like, I think the age gap between the two actors is, like, incredibly low.
Really? I mean, he does look older than I think he is canon-wise.
So,
how old is... Do you know how old he is canon-wise?
So, canon-wise... He would be young, on the younger side. Like, I think, not quite 20. I think we're talking, like, teenager age. Let me double check. So, he was born in 110. So, yeah, at this moment, I think he's 18.
Okay.
Oh, wait, hold on. No, 110. And the war kicks off. When does the war kick off again? Dance of the Dragons.
Dude, I don't even know most of the characters' names. You think I know what year things are happening?
Okay, so the war kicks out in 129. He was born on 110. So 110.
That's 18.
So he'd be 19.
You said 9? I meant 19.
So yeah. So I mean, by Game of Thrones, like by medieval standards, he's an adult. By our standards, he's an adult. He just can't drink or drive.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just felt. I mean, I guess this is the vibe they were going for. This isn't a criticism or anything, but he definitely is like seems pretty arrogant, just walking in and acting like he's some master strategist with years of experience.
Especially consider like how he recently fucked up.
Yeah, since he's the fucking retard who started the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. We also kind of get to see Aegon's like. He's kind of got a bit of the hot-headedness that some Targaryens have. Like, all right, me and my brother, we're going to fly out. We're going to have the river run submit, or we're going to fuck them all up. And we're also going to burn down the blockade. And while we're at it, maybe me and my brother, we go fuck up Dragonstone.
Yeah.
But kind of like the same it's kind of an interesting thing. And this is going to be like a weird comparison, but it reminds me of like the Civil War for the United States. Because both the Union and the Confederacy had these big metal battleships that they really wanted to use in battle, but they didn't because of how expensive they were to make. So they only used it in one battle against each other, where neither of them sank, and they both just fuck off and left.
I didn't know about that. That's pretty funny.
I think that's the story. I don't know. I saw it on YouTube, so it must be true. But that's kind of the vibe I'm kind of getting. Both sides have powerful dragons, but they're both kind of hesitant for the dragons to actually meet in battle, whether they have the advantage or not, just because of how risky it is in a way.
Yeah, for sure. Which is understandable.
I do think
a big deal.
I do think it's interesting that Daemon wants to be much more offensive, despite debatably the Greens having the larger advantage dragon-wise. Like, even though they're outnumbered, really the only ones they have to worry about is Rhaenyra, Rhaenys, and Daemon. So if they...
Well, I think that's why Daemon wants to go on the offensive. Is if they could get an early strike and take out Vhagar, then they would have an overwhelming advantage after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because who knows? Maybe when they attack King's Landing, Aemond is able to mount Vhagar and get into the battle quick, but Aegon might be a bit slower or something like that. Who knows? But overall, quite interesting when we kind of see the tactics and just the conflicting thing. What I like about this is whether you agree with their choices or not, you understand why they haven't quite made that decision.
Yeah, for sure.
I will say, though, it's a little interesting that they haven't got rid of the blockade, I feel. And that's actually a criticism I have from the books as well. There's definitely, like, the dragons I don't think are used quite to their full extent. Because, like, you can fuck up a lot of shit with the dragons. And there's not as much fucking up as you would expect from Dragon Wars.
Yeah, but I think it's almost like a Cold War sort of situation where, like, if you're either risking losing your weapon of mass destruction, or if you send your weapon of mass destruction to go destroy their shit, they'll just send theirs to go destroy your shit.
Now, the next scene we have Larry's, which it's weird that Larry's wasn't at the small council meeting, but whatever. Talking with Alice.
Yeah, because he's the Master of Whispers now, right?
He should be. He definitely is in the books. I don't know if they've outright stated that he's the Master of Whispers in the show. I don't even know if the phrase Master of Whispers has been stated at all. But he should have been at the small council meeting.
You would expect him to have been.
But anyways, he just kind of casually threatens Alicent.
Is that how you took? I mean, he definitely is like, you're not hiding your shit very well.
Well, the thing that got to me was, he says, I made sure to dispose of everyone who we couldn't trust. She's like, what happened to them? And you're like, they're all fucking dead. I personally made sure to select your handmaidens and your waitstaff. It's
Yeah, but I think at least from Allison's point of view, he's still like her pawn. So him selecting the staff personally is a good thing, I
no,
thought.
I don't think she likes that at all.
Oh.
Because think about it. The very next scene we get is where she's bathing with her waitstaff, and she's looking at them all, and then she tells them to piss off.
Oh. I didn't fucking catch that at all. You're 100% correct.
I always am.
Yes. She's freaking out now. She's like, everybody's a spy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's crazy. Why would he do that? Why would he piss off Allison?
I don't know. I think it's like, and I hate saying this because I don't like it that much, but I think it's like to show he has power over her. I think it's kind of like kind of like her showing her feet to him while he just pleasures himself right then and there. I think a little bit is like the power he has over a powerful woman.
So you think it's a sexual thing and not just a pure pragmatism?
I think so because pragmatically, why would he tell her that he handpicked all her maidens?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess a sexual thing does make more sense. But I guess my read on the character was that he was more pragmatic.
I think there is some pragmatism to it, but I don't want to even say like fully it's sexual, but I do think it just feels good to have power over Alicent.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe a little bit of a prideful thing as well.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
But after the bath scene, we get another show addition that I really like. And it's when Rhaenyra...
Finding the wing?
Yeah, finding the dead part of the dead dragon. And like in the books, she never finds anything like that or whatever. I think it's stated that the dragon's corpse washes up, but Lucerys' body is never found. Which I think means Lucerys is actually alive.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it's not going to be this season, but by the end of the season, we're going to see the actor for Luke all grown up with some scruff on his hair. He's going to have a big scar on his head, and he's just going to be fishing.
I think he's for sure dead.
So I'm actually pulling that from the books because a body was never found. There was like a lot of rumors, and one of the rumors was he survived the fall, but either from shock or injury, he lost his memory and just spends the rest of his life as a simple fisherman. A part of me kind of hopes that they put that like as in the final season or something. I would love that.
But what those history nerds who are writing those books don't know is that I watched Luke get chomped.
Did he get chomped?
I mean, his whole ass dragon got chomped. I don't know if like he literally physically got chomped, but there's no way Luke's alive in the show.
Maybe. I might have to watch that scene specifically. I thought like he fell off as the dragon was just getting fucking destroyed, but
he might have, but even if he did, he's dead as hell.
I mean, you're probably right, but still, I don't know. I think that would be a wonderful addition. But to be fair, it's actually specifically stated in the books that the true telling of the Dance of the Dragon pays lip service to these as much as it should, which is none at all, because the guy thought they were all bullshit.
Yeah.
But anyways, back to the scene at hand, though. I think it's just a very well acted scene. She flies in, all the small folk run the fuck away because a dragon shows up, and she goes to the dragon's wing. She finds the clothes of Lucerys and just breaks down. And I again, it's just amazing acting from Emma. I think, in a way, because of this scene, we didn't need the scene where she's just staring down Storm's End. But I really like this scene. I very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, I don't really have any complaints.
All right, then we get Aegon holding court, I think it's called, for the Seven Kingdoms, or King's Landing specifically, where he starts making rulings and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it. Like,
I also did.
There's a little bit kind of back and forth on, like, is Aegon actually trying to be nice, or is he just trying to kind of put on a facade for people to like him. And I get why people are a little like skeptical because of what they fucking did to him in the first season. But I think this is trying to show that Aegon really can be genuinely a good person and even a good king to an extent.
I don't think there's any example of him being a good king in this scene.
Okay, maybe good. I don't mean good as in fuck you, but
I mean,
well, actually, no. There is a hint to him being a good king, and that's when the blacksmith shows up. But
we don't know what the financial situation and all that is, and clearly he doesn't either. He's got no clue what the financial situation is. He's just making promises.
Well, anyway, so given the first thing, I do find it quite humorous that he's like, "Yeah, sure, you can have your sheep," and Otto like comes up and says, "No, we need those sheep." And he's like, "Well, how about we just give it to him? He came all this way."
Yeah.
Like it's a bit of that like childlike naivete, and that's the crazy thing. I think the actor, like Aegon's older than Aemond, but not only like actor wise, but like how the show portrays them, Aegon feels younger than Aemond.
Oh, for sure. As far as the way they're portrayed, it definitely is one of those situations where it feels like the younger brother's kind of a lot more mature than the older one, which, I mean, if you look at the lives they've led, checks out.
Yeah, I mean, when you lose an eye, it ages you up.
And, I mean, mounting a mountain of a dragon, I feel like that matures you a little bit.
But yeah, the actor is 29, but he is able to get off a much more younger experience and vibe.
Mm-hmm. His delivery of "they won't know" is so good.
But then Otto, when the king speaks, everyone hears.
Yeah, look at Otto killing the vibe.
But yeah, to put that in perspective, though, the actress for Alicent is 30 years old. So she has one son who's 1 year younger and another son who's 3 years younger. So she started early.
Yeah, real early. Yeah, I will say now that when you point that out, she doesn't look quite as old as I would expect her to look.
Honestly, like that's the crazy thing. I give the actress a little bit of a break because she's older than I actually thought she was. She's looks very young. So one could like easily say like, there's a lot of young looking women in the world, so it's quite possible, she could be 40 and still like, look really young. So I'm not super critical on that. I'm more critical on the actors that they picked for Aegon and Aemond looking a bit too old than her looking a bit too young, if that makes sense. Plus, lore-wise, Alicent has been noted to like still be very beautiful and youthful looking even after having her kids. So I'm not too picky on that. But I do think it's hilarious that the actors themselves are only 3 years apart. They're siblings more than mother and son.
Yeah.
All right. So anyways, Otto speaks to Aegon, and gets him to reverse his decision that they can't just start handing out the sheep, which I think is the smart decision to make.
For sure.
All right. Then the next guy, this one's like real quick. He's like, Your Grace, the blockade is fucking shit up. And Aegon's like, don't worry, we're going to burn that shit down soon.
Mm-hmm. Based.
And then we have this guy named Hugh the blacksmith. And he talks about, how the smith kind of needs the gold and whatnot, so that way they're able to make the weapons and armor and scorpions that the crown needs. And this is one of the few times that I'm actually on Aegon's side instead of Otto's, because you're going to need those fuckers. It's not like, I think the sheep stuff, that's a little bit different because you do want to make sure that your most powerful things, your dragons, are well fed and well kept. But you still need the scorpions to fight dragons if there aren't any dragons around, which the Greens have the fewest. So if the Blacks split up, they're going to do more damage that way because Aegon and Aemond aren't going to be able to deal with it by themselves.
I am a principled man, and one of those principles is I hate all government spending. So I cannot support
Like, I understand.
giving gold to those blacksmiths.
I understand that, but the one thing I'll support our government spending on is the military.
Oh, that is true. That is pretty based. Military spending's badass.
So yeah, we need bigger ballistas.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess the vibe I got is who the hell is Hugh? I don't know anything about this guy. He might be scamming the king. He might not need that money ahead of time. And then also, I'm like, I think Otto knows what's going on a lot better. So if Otto was about to object, then I assume he had a good reason of like probably inflation or something. Mm-hmm. And so I do have some doubts about whether or not that was a good decision for Aegon to make.
Yeah. At the same time, though, Aegon can't just keep outright refusing every single person who comes and makes a plead with him, unless they're all completely unreasonable. I would say, though, realistically speaking, maybe if Aegon had said, like, we'll give you half payment before and half after or something along those lines.
Yeah. Yeah, some sort of negotiation. But again, I don't feel like Aemon knows anything about, like, he just knows he wants to burn down the blockade. That's the only thing Aemon knows. Yeah. So I don't think he has the knowledge to even do a proper negotiation.
So that's the last thing. And funny enough, you'll actually be seeing Hugh quite a bit in the future. I'm not going to go into any like strong details, but he'll be a pretty prominent character.
Oh, damn.
It's kind of funny you were saying, like, I don't know who this fucker is.
Yeah, I've never met Hugh before in my life.
All right. Next scene, though, we got an interaction between Aegon and Larys. Fuck that name. I don't know why that one gives me more trouble than the Targaryens. But anyways. And pretty much it's him saying, like, you know, that Otto guy, that ain't a real good hand. You should find someone else.
Yeah, like he's trying to control you. You don't want to be controlled, right? You're a smart fella. Yeah. Which I've got to say, my vibe after watching this scene is that the Larys is going to be completely untrustworthy and backstab everybody blatantly the entire series, and I feel like he's going to get rewarded for it nonstop until maybe like he dies brutally at the end. But that's one thing I'm not a fan of with like George's writing is like there's characters that are just like complete scumbags the whole way through, and everybody just continues to play ball with them, mm-hmm. And it's like at a certain point, somebody's got to be like, this guy has never once stood by his word a single time. Why would I trust him?
Mm-hmm. And it's
so that's my prediction for Larys.
Yeah, it's kind of like a lot of like that's pretty much the issue with Peter Baelish from the original series.
For sure.
What's kind of funny is Petire, however you pronounce it, he kind of suffers from a bit of a retcon on George R.R. Martin's part. In the very first book, like, Peter is like presented as like someone who is not someone you cannot trust and should not trust, but you kind of have to just because of the power and influence he has. But then, like in later books, it kind of flips. It changes into, everyone loves Peter, everyone trusts him, because they're like not exactly aware of the shit he's pulled and whatnot, which I'm not a big fan of. I get some enjoyment from the character, but it's because of that inconsistency in a way, as well as some characters I feel like not acting super responsible to it. A big criticism a lot of people have is, why didn't Tyrion kill Peter when he got to King's Landing?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I get the feeling Larys is going to be a very similar character to Peter.
Yeah, but hopefully not quite as backstabby. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but, you know...
I guess if his backstabbing slows down after this betrayal that he's doing right here, maybe.
I mean, a lot of it is just, like, so long as it's reasonable for people to not be aware of the backstabbing he's doing.
Yeah, but, I mean, he's basically just walking up to Aegon and being like, hey, I'm backstabbing the fucking... high castles right now. That's basically what this conversation is.
High towers.
Yeah, whatever. The high people.
Right. Yeah. And now, I don't know. Is there anything else you want to comment on that scene?
No.
All right. Next, we have a little bit of a back and forth between Alicent and Otto.
Mm-hmm.
Alicent's like, I summoned you hours ago, and he's like, I was busy. This feels, this scene doesn't feel like super important one way or another. Like, I feel like it's Alicent being stupid and truthful to Otto, and Otto lying through his teeth to his daughter.
Yeah.
Are
Yeah, Otto's definitely just trying to get Alicent to be more on his side, and Alicent is still pretty naive.
like, good God, good fucking God. I get they changed Alicent from the book, because in the book she's a much more black character, but like she had a backbone. She made decisions, and she knew that Rhaenyra was her enemy. Because of the change, they were friends since they were young and whatnot. They can't quite do that, but I feel like this extent is a little too naive. It's like she's trying. I don't know. It's like I'm really starting to wonder if, like, I know a lot of people said, and I think some of the actresses as well said there was some romantic tension between the two, and I'm feeling like that's the only real justification you can give here. And even so, that's so stupid.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I wish Alicent would be like a bit more of a contributing factor to the Greens rather than a detriment at this point.
Yeah, that would be a complete 180 for her character.
I don't think
At least, like in the show. In the book, maybe not, but yeah, in the show, I mean, I feel like her purpose is to kind of push against the Greens doing some of the things they need to do.
And I don't like that because it makes her feel useless in a way.
Also, well, she's very useful for the blacks.
Yeah. But there was hints. There was hints that she was actually, like, even in the first season, there were hints that, like, she realized that Rhaenyra was an enemy. When Rhaenyra lied to her face, the moment where Alicent held Aegon's face and said, "You need to be queen, because if she becomes queen, she will kill you." When
they do keep kind of like ping-ponging her back and forth, where she'll have a scene where, like, all right, now Alicent's finally, she's on board with, being like wholly selfish in her goals, and then they do some shit, and she kind of gets sympathetic to Rhaenyra again. And the latest example is Aemon killing Luke. So they do keep ping-ponging her back and forth.
I think it makes her look really dumb, especially I think they say here that now she realizes that war isn't inevitable, but now she's just like, no wanton destruction, and she still thinks at this point they can make peace and Rhaenyra will submit. That door is shut. Either Aegon and Aemond have to die along with their sons, or Aegon's sons, I should say, or Rhaenyra and her sons have to die. There is, that's it. That's the only way this can end now.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that I'm okay with her just being kind of stupid. I don't have a cool Alicent who was useful to, like, base my opinion of her off of. So in my mind, this is just, Alicent's kind of manipulated and useless and dumb. That's just her character.
Yeah, I mean, Alicent in the books isn't exactly an amazing character, and she takes a back seat as the Dance of the Dragons turns more so into Aegon versus Rhaenyra, rather than Rhaenyra versus Alicent, which just kind of seems what the show goes for a little bit more. But overall, I think despite my annoyance of how useless and stupid Alicent is, I think it's a good scene. And I pray to God, though, she does not believe a single thing her father is telling her.
Oh, she's eating it up. She's gobbling it all up. I will say, Aemond Aird is the craziest way to say murdered his cousin.
Oh, that actually kind of reminds me. I don't know if you've noticed it. Some other people have kind of commented, but does the dialogue in this episode feel much more, in a way, theatrical or Shakespearean almost compared to the first season?
I didn't notice anything in particular. There were like on the dock scene with the
Corley's
the
and Alan.
yes. On that scene I did notice like some of the dialogue felt a little bit odd, but nothing major.
Yeah, like I'm not saying that as a like that's a detriment or anything, but I feel like there was definitely a few times where I heard a word and I knew what it meant because of how it was being said. But it's just like I've never heard that shit before. And
Yeah, like magnanimous.
yeah, I feel like it kind of works because it is just more of a medieval setting, and so like I hate Shakespearean talk because I don't understand what the fuck they say, and half the words they use was made up by Shakespeare. But little tidbits of it here and there kind of just gives credence to a bit of an older time.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't noticed, but it's possible it's happening.
Mhm. Yeah, I enjoyed Otto in this scene, pretty much lying like, "Oh yeah, I want her to surrender too," but I felt like in the back of my hand, she fucking won't though.
Yeah, and I feel like so far in our conversation we haven't talked enough about real life politics. So I just wanted to point out that when Otto says the path to victory is one of violence, I bet Otto and Netanyahu would get along great.
I think there's a lot of world leaders that Otto would get along with.
That's fair.
Now, we eventually get the scene where Eric finds Misari, I believe that's her name, on a boat. She was a stowaway. And I say that in quotations because if she's a stowaway, that's the shittiest hiding I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, they definitely implied she was a stowaway, but yeah, she wasn't really hidden. She was more just sitting in the back corner.
And now she still has that stupid ass accent, but I don't think it's nearly as bad as the first season. It's toned down a lot, I feel. It's still there, but like if this is how it was in the first season, I don't think people would have mocked it as much. So I think that's just something I wanted to point out. She still has that stupid accent, but it's not nearly as bad.
Yeah. Did I jump on board the? Do you remember if I was on board the accent hate train?
I think so. I think specifically, like when she was talking with Otto Hightower in the first season, you and I ribbed into it quite a bit.
Okay, yeah. If I noticed it in the first season, I did not notice it here.
Yeah.
So definite improvement, I guess.
Yeah. So Damon is a little bit of a little bitch here, like, oh, yeah, you helped them find Aegon. Yeah, you started this war, and all that kind of horse shit.
Yeah, I don't really remember exactly how she was involved. I mean, I remember she's just like deals in information and all that, but I don't know how factual Damon's accusations are here.
Damon is just being an emotional baby. I feel like there's something else there. Like, this is the whore that he slept with in the first season and whatnot. So I think there's
so he feels like he got cucked a little bit.
I don't know, but yeah, she did help Otto find Aegon, but it should be noted that Kristen and Aemond found Aegon at the exact same fucking time. So her contribution to that was nothing. It was literally nothing.
Oh, yeah. So he's just being a whiny bitch then.
Yeah. There's a couple of like book differences here, but it's not anything like super crazy, and I can go into more detail about those differences when another scene comes up. But this all feels kind of wasted time, not really of that much importance. They need to introduce her so that way they know the Blacks have her and can use her, but
Yeah, I mean, it's not that long of a scene, so I think it's a good way to just kind of establish her location.
Yeah, And then you have a little bit of the back and forth between Damon and Eric.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's okay. Again, I don't have a whole lot to comment on.
The one thing that I wasn't sure about is Eric says he took an oath to defend the whole royal family. Is that really the Kingsguard oath? I thought it was just to defend the king.
So that's actually something. It gets muddied in a couple of ways, but I think it's to follow the king's rules and law, or like specifically, like you're kind of supposed to follow and do whatever the king says, because defending the royal family can get a bit iffy. Jamie had this situation where he was standing outside King Ares' room with another member of the Kingsguard, and the king was raping the queen. And he looked to his brother at arms and said, "Aren't we supposed to defend the queen as well as the king?" To which his brother says, "We defend her from everyone except the king."
Mm-hmm.
So it's like one of those things. Like, if, Viserys wanted them to keep everyone safe, and then that shit ended. Now they're all trying to kill each other. Who do you protect? When your king orders you to kill your father, what do you do?
Understandable. Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know the exact wording of the oath. Like, it's not like the Night's Watch where we get like the whole thing and it becomes like a popular phrase in some ways. But it pretty much boils down to they are sworn to obey the king's commands as well as to keep his secrets, counsel him when counsel was requested, and keep silent when it was not. Serve his pleasure and defend his name and honor. And so that's most of it.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted some clarification on that.
Yeah. Strictly speaking, it's purely the king's choice whether or not to extend the Kingsguard protection to others, even those of royal blood. Some kings thought it right and proper to dispatch Kingsguard to serve and defend their wives and children, siblings, aunts, uncles, and cousins of greater or lesser degree, and occasionally even their lovers, mistresses, and bastards. But some kept all the Kingsguard to themselves and allowed men-at-arms or other knights to protect their loved ones.
All right.
But yeah, so there's nothing like super contradictive about that in this regard. But yeah, this is just to see, like, kind of like the previous one. This is not one that I hate, but I don't love it either. It's just a scene that exists.
Yeah, I mean, I think I guess I don't know how important Eric's going to be, but I think it's important to kind of, I don't know, it's nice to just get a different character's perspective sometimes.
He has an interesting moment. He has a very interesting moment.
And then we get Rhaenyra returning.
Yep, and she gives her one and only line in the entire episode.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one that we can all reasonably understand.
Yeah, I guess, but it's a dog shit. It's not good. It's not good queening. It's bad queening.
It's definitely not good queening. She's still very much depressed, very much mourning. And right now, all her eyes are on revenge and killing the one who killed her son.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and it's like as a in her position, I feel like she should be giving directions. I feel like that's the role of leadership usually, is they lead, and she just says, "I want."
Let's be fair here. I feel like if she gave directions, she would give the wrong directions.
Sure. But yeah, I mean, it's fair enough, but it does give me some pretty serious doubts about how good of a leader she's going to be here in the next few episodes.
I mean, let's give her a little bit of a break. It is still pretty tragic to go through what she has.
Nah, I mean, this is medieval times. Losing a son is, just another day at work.
Usually you lose them, though, when you first pop them out. Once they're, past 3 or 4, they're usually safe.
No, they're not a real person until they hit, I don't know, 1 year older than Luke was.
Jeez Louise. So yeah, I still want to again just kind of say that Emma does a great job, even though, like I said, she's not given a whole lot this scene, but she eats every scene that she's in, mainly because she's kind of the focus in a lot of ways. But anyways, she gives her command. She wants Aemon dead. So Daemon acts on that, and in the next scene, he goes back to his whore and starts negotiating with her. And I mean, this is like where the real meat of the episode starts to kick off, which is blood and cheese.
Yes.
And like again, like, and now I feel like I can go into like book stuff and whatnot. So at this point, Daemon actually isn't in Dragonstone. He's actually on his dragon out, like kind of, like all the talks on that the Greens and the Blacks were doing tactic wise. He's pretty much acting out those. I'm not going to say whether he's successful or whether he fails, but he's out doing shit at this point. And I think he's pretty much out doing shit before Lucerys dies, even. And so he gets the news, and he sends a raven to Dragonstone that pretty much just says, and I'm paraphrasing here slightly, a son for a son, you will have your revenge. And that's it. That's as far as his connection to the blood and cheese. And I think it's pretty much hinted at and confirmed that he pretty much sends a letter or information to Misari that she orchestrates blood and cheese. Like, it's kind of like her. She's doing the dirty work in getting those two guys together to enact this plan. Because she's still in King's Landing at this point.
Okay. Okay, so Daemon... Yeah, okay. I see what you're saying. So it's pretty. It does seem crazy for Daemon to just like go to King's Landing.
Yeah, we can talk about that in the next. But first, before we get into that, though, the next scene is probably my favorite scene in the episode. It's when Jace gets back from the north and he's trying to keep his composure and tell his mom his duties. He fulfilled his duties. The Vale will side with him. The North will side with him, and his voice cracks and he breaks down and. Rhaenyra gets up and hugs him, and I do think this is the best scene in the episode.
Yeah, it's a good scene. It's a good scene. He acts it out really well.
Nah, I almost got a little teary-eyed. No, I didn't cry, because that's for bitches, but it did make me sniffle a bit.
Yeah, like the way he chokes up, I feel like I have had, like I can feel the exact like frog in your throat, the exact lump in your throat that he's got going on there. It's really well done.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and then the next scene we got, it's pretty much a back and forth between Alicent lighting candles in the sept and the funeral, a proper funeral in a way they have for Luke. And I think it's done well. I don't have any big, strong emotions. I think it's a scene that does what it needs to set out to do.
Yeah, I mean, just from Alicent's perspective, it's like, come on, what are you doing? The only thing worse than being partially responsible for the kid's death is the hypocrisy of, like, praying for him. I don't know.
I mean, I just want to remind everyone, this is the same woman who, after her son lost his eye, she was gung-ho and ready to cut the other kid's eye out. So she should at least think that Rhaenyra is like, okay, son for a son as well. She should not, again, we've already beat this dead horse, but so stupid.
Yeah, Alicent is kind of a dumb bitch.
And I do like the little moment, though, where Joffrey, like, throws in the wooden horse to the pyre for Lucerys.
Yeah.
Overall, a very, somber scene that I think is handled very well. Oh, yeah. This actually kind of reminds me, though.
It reminds you.
I'm a little disappointed that we never saw the Greens reacting to the news of Lucerys' death. Like, it's nothing.
That's true.
Yeah, it's nothing. They just know and they've accepted it and they've kind of moved on. I would have liked. I think it would have been great to like kind of see the reactions. Like, I think that would have honestly been a better scene to open up with than Jace off in the north and cut out that fucking stupid narration or whatever. Like, honestly, you probably could have gotten rid of it and saved Kragan for like another day or whatever. But have Aemon like fly back to King's Landing and tell them, and then we get to see the reactions. And it's kind of interesting because Otto and Alicent in the books were pissed that Aemon had killed Lucerys. Otto even says, "You only lost one eye. How blind can you be?" and shit like that. Aegon, however, was actually like more supportive. He's just like, "All right, we're getting started now. That's good. You took out an enemy."
Yeah, actually, I would like to have seen that.
But we didn't, sadly. We had to learn about the stupid ass lottery.
Yeah, lottery is important. Go buy your tickets right now. Everybody, go buy lottery tickets. It's a great investment.
And if you win, you too can work at the wall.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's the lottery I was talking about.
Mm-hmm. And then next, we have Daemon with his crime hoodie, and he approaches the castle or the gates to King's Landing and bribes his way in, which is
why did he have to bribe this guy? I thought this guy was on his team anyways.
I mean, so Aemon was, leader of the Gold Cloaks and whatnot. He's been gone for a while, though, so there's no guarantee that all the Gold Cloaks are going to be super loyal to him. I will say, though, like, it's just needlessly risky. Because, let's be fair here, because obviously it seems like Daemon came knowing that it was going to be this specific Gold Cloak.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't know how much of a connection he has with him. I don't know if Daemon like kind of knew him when he was in charge of the Gold Cloaks, one way or another. But it seems very risky because he's coming to this guy in order to hire him to go and kill one of the most dangerous people on the planet, not just because of the dragon, but a very skilled fighter in his own right. I dare say the best fighter in the realm, because we do see him defeat Kristen Cole.
Aegon? Or Aemond?
Aemond.
Aemond beats Kristen?
Yeah, remember it was in the first season. They were kind of dueling. Kristen was using a flail, and Aemond was just using a sword and shield.
I don't remember that.
Well, he won.
That's crazy.
But with that, it just... So, once this guy, like, takes the gold and starts walking Daemon away, what's stopping him from just turning him in and getting the biggest fucking paycheck of his life? Like,
oh, yeah. Well, and also just, like, going up to a random rat catcher. Like, that... This guy could have screwed Daemon pretty hard.
Yeah, like... That's the thing. Like, it would have made more sense if they kept Misari in King's Landing and had her do this.
Yeah.
Which is what they did in the fucking book.
Yeah, the changes are weird because it's one of those things where you hope that they have some plan up down the road that'll make it make sense in the future for why they had to, like, move characters around. But then they don't. They just moved characters around... I guess because they felt like being quirky.
I mean, I feel like it boils down to that they want to use Daemon more than they want to use Misari.
Yeah, I guess. But,
I mean, at the end of the day, you and I are in agreement. This is needlessly risky on Daemon's part, and it could have fucked over the Blacks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like he risked literally everything just for something that he didn't need to be there for that.
Yeah, but I mean, also they probably spent a lot of money on the costume for his crime hoodie, so they got to make the most of it.
That's true, and also everybody knows that when you put a hood on, you become unrecognizable.
You're just invisible. Nobody knows who he is.
Yeah, it's like when Marvel characters put on a hat and sunglasses.
But anyway, so he meets with the rat catcher, and even though I have my gripes with Daemon being here at all, I mean, I think overall this is handled reasonably well.
Yeah, and Cheese, like you said earlier, he's fantastic.
Like
I love Cheese.
he's just a rat. He's literally a rat. He's got like the facial features. Like he's going to like he's like squeaking sometimes or like smacking his lips. I don't know how you describe it, but he's a fucking rat in every possible way, and I just love it. It's almost like a cartoon character.
Yeah, he does capture. He does capture like this, like the. You know what? Never mind. That one might be too far. I'll just keep that one to myself.
But with that, so an interesting thing is that they obviously Damon comes in and says, "Go, you guys! I'm sending you guys to kill Aemond." And in the books, Aemond actually isn't mentioned as being a target for Blood and Cheese.
Oh, really?
In fact, we don't know who the target is per se. It's mostly theorized that Aegon himself would have been the target, which makes some sense, but I would argue that Aemond being the prime target would be the most logical. I mean, don't get me wrong, Aegon's dangerous, but Aemond more so. And if you just kill Aegon, then it's Aemond who's claiming the crown now instead of Aegon. So you might as well knock out Aegon. Or Aemond.
Yeah.
So that's...
Yeah, he definitely makes the most sense.
Yeah. So a lot of people have, like, and that's the thing, a lot of people misremember and say that Daemon had hired Blood and Cheese specifically to go after Aegon's kids, a son for a son, in that manner, when it's not specifically stated.
Okay, so possibly canon that Cheese. I mean, Blood and Cheese being completely incompetent fits, in my opinion.
Well, that's the thing. They aren't actually incompetent in the books, but I can go into.
Oh, really?
I can go into a little more detail later because.
Well, if you don't know who they were supposed to be killing, they don't come across as incompetent.
Yeah, because the thing is, so how they actually go about it, and we might as well talk about this because I don't think we'll have a whole lot of comments to say like throughout the scene until we get to that moment. But what they did was, so it's assumed that Aegon himself was their target, but he was too difficult to get to because Maegor's Keep, or the Red Keep, I should say. I think it's Maegor's Hall or something. Yeah, there's all sorts of fucking different names. Was pretty heavily guarded, and Aegon, of course, had his Kingsguard with him at almost all times. Mm-hmm. So instead, what they do is they went to the Hand's Tower, where Alicent was, and they sneak into her with the secret tunnels, and they actually tie her up and wait. Because it often happened that Helaena, with her children, would visit Alicent before bedtime. So Helaena then visits, and they grab her, and they kill the guards that were with her. And then they force her to choose which son they kill. Because in the books, she has 3 kids. She has 2 sons and 1 daughter. And so she's forced to pick which son dies. And she pleads with them, of course. She says, kill me instead for the blood revenge of Lucerys and whatnot. To which they just respond with, you're not a son. Pick. Mm-hmm. And their Blood and Cheese are fucked up. Like, just to put it in perspective, Blood actually wasn't a Gold Cloak member. He used to be, but he got fired for beating a whore to death in a drunk rage, which, we've all been there. But during this moment, like, they get to the point where Cheese pretty much threatens, like, hey, if you don't pick a son, we'll just kill you all. And also, Blood's probably going to rape your little girl before we kill you. Which is just fucking hell. Like, I know...
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people have said that... Like, I don't know if you know this, but Blood and Cheese is a little controversial right now. I think a lot of people enjoyed it, but book fans in particular were not big fans. And people are making the argument, like, it wasn't as bloody and fucked up as it is in the books, which, that's not why. Personally, I would be fine with the removal of the whole, like, threatening of raping a 6-year-old. I think George leans in a little bit too hard on sexual assault at sometimes, but it's not here or there. But overall, I wasn't super impressed with how they handled it in the show. But anyways, what happens is Helaena eventually picks her youngest son. We don't know exactly why. Maybe it was because the eldest was Aegon's heir. Maybe it was because with how young the son was. Maybe it's like he wasn't as aware of his situation, so the killing wouldn't have been as bad to him. But in the end, what happens is Cheese holds up the baby boy and says, "Did you hear that? Your mother wants you dead." And then Blood just cuts off the head of the older one, and they both dip. Like, honestly, like, I know people are like, were really disturbed by how the show handled it. The book was probably more fucked up.
Yeah, it sounds like the book was 100% more fucked up.
Yeah.
But the show's pretty fucked up, too.
The show is pretty fucked up, but I think it's fucked up on one specific moment. Like, that one moment, they handled it really well, but I'm very disappointed in all of their aspects. But anyways, getting back to the show itself, before we actually get to Blood and Cheese, I forgot about this scene. We have Aemond and Kristen kind of talking a little bit about strategy and tactics.
Yeah.
And, it feels fine. They're talking a little bit about the tactics, gaining their host, telling people to join them and whatnot, their general plans. I always kind of enjoy these things, but I know in the grand scheme of things, ironically, it's not super important because both sides have nukes.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I think the important thing here is that they're making plans behind everybody else's backs with the intention to just go straight to Aegon to try and get it done.
Yeah, which, fair enough. But I think the real meat that this scene is supposed to have is their discussion on Alicent and how pretty much they confirm, like, yeah, she still has feelings and loves Rhaenyra. And that's a weakness or, a problem. Which, they're fucking right. They really are fucking right.
Yeah, I don't think Cole agrees. But yeah, Aemond is right about his mom.
Well, no. Cole at least says, like, he's less blaming on Alicent. He's all like, oh, she's just manipulated by Rhaenyra. She was intoxified by her. She keeps describing Rhaenyra as a spider and whatnot. So, like, yeah. They both acknowledge the issue. It's just that Cole's more forgiving because he's porking the queen.
Right. He's simping hard.
God damn. What? God. Kristen Cole, simp guard of the king. Anyways.
He is they did simp Cole. They made him simping Cole.
Which is ridiculous because there's only one hint of a romantic relationship between him and Rhaenyra. And there's nothing for Alicent. At fucking all.
Yeah, they couldn't help themselves. They got greedy.
But then Otto walks in, and Kristen stands at Lord at attention. Otto, like, waits a little bit, keeps him at attention, then says, all right, get the fuck out. And he speaks to Aemond, and he is pretty much like, you need to calm down. You are our biggest asset. We can't risk you.
Yeah, I mean, again, I feel like Otto is pretty much right, always. Like, everything he says is, like, logically sound. If people would just do what Otto said, I think that the Greens would probably
be in a much better
do
position.
Well. Yeah. They might not like automatically win or anything, but yeah, I think everyone needs to just fucking listen to Otto for a little bit.
I think Otto is more right, but I think that both of them in the end are wrong. I think the Greens do need to take a bit more action. And I think,
well, Otto's not saying they don't need to take action.
Well, Otto's is just a very different kind of action. And maybe I'm kind of putting the book Otto a bit more on the show Otto. But a lot of the actions that he's taken right now currently is like sending letters, making alliance, having people declare for Aegon, which is all well and good. But at the end of the day, those they'll factor in a little bit, but they're not the biggest threat. They're not what you need to be focusing on and dealing with. You need to be figuring out the best way to take out the enemy dragons. That's where it's all going to come down to.
True. And also, I guess, trying to gather up any wild dragons that are out and about.
Yeah, but more so, like, if you take out, like, one of their dragons... Like, Lucerys dying, like, yeah, Dragon Rider technically, but he wasn't going to be doing a whole lot of shit in the war.
Mm-hmm.
He was probably just barely old enough to maybe take part, but that's a stretch.
Yeah, delivering messages was probably going to be his main role.
But if you were to take out Rhaenyra, Daemon, or Rhaenys, Even Jace to a certain extent, possibly. That's a different story. That kind of sends
Hmm.
more ripples, and I think that would do more good for convincing people to join the Greens than waiting around like this.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think there's a good middle ground, but I think I honestly more so side with Aemond than Otto in this particular instance.
Maybe so. I could be convinced.
But yeah, overall, a nice scene, and it's pretty much just Otto saying, "Calm your tits, don't be impulsive," which is still like good. Like you want, like I agree with Aemon's general plan, but he just has to be less hot headed about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I still just like the whole sending your dragons out to fight other dragons. It just seems so like how the hell are they planning on going to burn the barricade when that's almost like a guaranteed 2v1 sort of situation?
Well, that's the thing. That's kind of surprising because we know that Rhaenys was patrolling the barricade.
Hmm.
So what's stopping just Aegon and Rhaegar from just jumping her 2v1?
Well, presumably Damon would be nearby.
Fairly nearby, but couldn't
And
get there.
they don't I don't think they know that Rhaenyra is just off fucking around.
That's fair. I honestly keep forgetting that. I do often forget Rhaenyra is a dragon rider because in the books she sure as shit doesn't do a whole lot with it. I
Ah.
and that's something I've heard. I know like some book fans have like we've heard that they're planning on making her a bit more of a integral part to the war efforts and whatnot. Some book fans aren't a huge fan of that. I actually am. I think like her being out of it for so long, even if she is like a very feminine character, like not exactly prone to be really a fighter in any way, I do think it's ridiculous that no advantage was taken with her and her dragon.
Yeah, in my mind, even if the rider's completely useless, having a dragon out there fighting is completely worthwhile.
Yeah, indeed, indeed, indeed. So you're right. I sometimes forget about her dragon fighting capabilities because they don't exist in the book. And like, I enjoy Fire and Blood, but it definitely has quite a few issues. But enough about all that and the tactics and whatnot. Now we get to where Blood and Cheese actually start kind of sneaking in through all the secret tunnels and sewers and whatnot. Which,
Yeah.
personally, the first few moments in it, the show is ruined for me. Because they walk to a ladder, Cheese goes up it and he says, "Bring the dog." And it's impossible for Blood to carry all that up on his own. It's impossible.
Yeah, he's got all the rat cages, a torch, and is supposed to carry the dog.
It just ruins it. 1 out of 10 episode.
Yeah. Yeah, that does pretty much ruin the whole series.
I mean, obviously, I think it was more so done for a joke, but it was kind of humorous, but not worth it. Anyways, a lot of people were really surprised, like that we're getting like quote unquote a point of view for Blood and Cheese. And me personally, I think that's like really the only best way they could have gone about it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess how the only other way would be to just show the results.
Yeah, like kind of.
But if they just showed the results, it would be so confusing. You'd be like, "What the fuck? Why did they kill a random kid instead of Aemond?"
Yeah, so I feel like they had to go through the process of showing us the point of view for Blood and Cheese.
Well, and I feel like that's one of the big advantages of adapting a story that's told as a history into a TV show like this is that you get to then see the historical events really play out.
Sometimes
Sometimes.
when they don't.
Sometimes
like
they
with an exploding
skip.
dragon pit.
Yeah, sometimes they skip Aemond coming back and getting scolded for no reason.
Yeah.
Also.
Anyways, we get to see Aegon drunk on the throne with his boys, pretty much talking about his dragon cock and how it's untamable.
Well, and also he's like, they should call me Aegon the Generous, not the Magnanimous. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, it's it's a pretty good scene. Like I said, Aegon is the most improved character in this episode, and possibly like overall the best character in this episode.
Also, so now I'm freaking out because you freaked me out with the dock scene. Is this black guy a Valerian?
No.
He's just a black guy?
You forgot. I was going to make that joke. I was going to point him out and say, like, also, just to be clear, that's not a Valyrian or a Velaryon. No, that's just a black guy.
It's just black. I mean, he's got black hair.
Yeah.
If he was bald, he might have been a Valerian.
Maybe. But no, he's just a black person. Maybe he's from the Summer Islands. Maybe he's from Essos. We don't know. But yeah, that's just a black guy. And, you know, it's King's Landing, so some diversity is a bit okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah. King's Landing is kind of like, you know, New York City. That's where everyone congregates.
Yeah. So then Cheese and Blood, they're fucking wandering through the tunnels. So, like, these tunnels, I was assuming they're like servants' passages, so that the servants aren't having to be, like, out in the way, visible all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But they're freaking huge.
So, these tunnels were actually created by Maegor the Cruel, like during the final constructions of the Red Keep. He had a bunch of construction guys build these secret tunnels, so that way, in case of the castle being sieged or he needs to get out or whatever, there are ways for him and the royal family to escape. And to keep it a secret, he got all the people who constructed it and threw them a big lavish feast, and then at the end, had them all killed. So that way only he would know the secret tunnels.
Ah.
Now, obviously, people have discovered it. Obviously, Cheese has, and Varys in the original series is also one who discovered these tunnels and kind of how they're laid out.
Oh, but they're not common knowledge?
They are not common knowledge.
Damn, Cheese is the most overqualified rat catcher ever.
Mm-hmm.
He had such a bright career ahead of him. Why would he throw it all away?
So, and then we get the scene where Cheese is just like, you know, Blood is like, how do we get up there? He's just like, I don't know, I've never been there. And Blood gets pissed and almost kills Cheese right then and there.
Which is fair enough. Like, he had one job. Cheese had one job.
Get me to the fucking family. I get the killing, you get us there.
Yeah. And this is also where Cheese kicks the dog.
Oh, poor dog.
The only unforgivable offense.
There's no
threatening to rape children, that I can get over that, but kicking a dog, no. That's where I draw the line.
We all love dogs too much. They're good boys.
Especially a working dog, you know, a rat terrier.
Yeah.
That's a good boy right there.
So some more kind of sleuthing around and whatnot. Nothing too crazy. A lot of this kind of feels like padding in a way.
I don't know. It's like building the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. Well, anyways, they do make it to Aemon's room.
Which seems a little bit like a coincidence. Like they pop out directly in the room Aemon was just in.
Well, maybe not Aemon's room, because it might look more like a meeting room or some sort. I don't see any.
Yeah, but it was a room he was just in.
Yeah, I love how Blood immediately just steals the gold and silver pieces.
Yeah.
Using, like, take this shit.
Yeah, that was a good detail.
Right? And then it, like, almost, I feel like, changes into kind of like a horror movie from the perspective of Blood and Cheese, as Blood is, like, walking around, it's raining, it's pouring, and the music is just like, like it's all scary.
It is pretty tense.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
I feel like I'm way more worried about Blood getting caught than Blood is. I feel like Blood's like completely vibing this whole time.
Yeah. I will say it's very there is a distinct lack of guards here, which I feel is very surprising, because they're in times
I also
of
felt
war.
like that was the case.
Like,
yeah, the only person they run into is a maid.
Yeah, a handmaiden, and like he pretends to be a rat catcher, and he's like setting it up. When he hits the torch, I thought for sure he was about to set some shit on fire.
Yeah, same. I was like, oh, so this is how they burn down the fucking castle.
Yeah. And then, so he hears a scream, and then he goes over towards the scream, and he finds Cheese holding Helena by knife point.
Uh-huh.
And again, no guards. You'd think like thered be some protection with her, like at least some dead bodies. Like maybe Cheese snuck up and stabby stab stab. But anyways,
Yeah, she's just a member of the royal family. No need to have protection near her.
yeah. And some people, I've touched on this a bit before, but like I said, some people were kind of pissed that in a way they seem to have changed it to where Blood and Cheese were specifically told to go after like the children, whereas in this it's kind of more like an accident. But I think there's more to it because the final scene between Damon and Cheese is when Cheese asks, "And what if we can't find him?" Damon kind of looks at him. He might have smirks, I can't remember, but then it cuts away. I think it's implied that he says if you can't find Aemond, then like get Aegon, and if you can't get Aegon, then get the one of the kids. We want a son for a son, no matter what. So I don't.
I think that's drawing a lot from one look.
Like,
Because in my mind, these guys completely cocked the whole thing up. These guys screwed the whole pooch.
well, but the thing is, they asked, "What if we can't find Aemond?" Presumably, Damon answered. So there is something for them to do if they can't find Aemond, which they can't.
I got the impression that Damon was being like, "I'm paying you to find Aemon, so that's what you're gonna do." Like that. When I watched that scene, I was like, "That was Damon being like, failure's not an option, dumbass."
Okay, that's probably reasonable. So in that case, yeah, this is all looking to you like a big cock up.
Yeah, I do think it's kind of funny that they basically pull a berserk. They get hired to go assassinate someone, and then they just end up killing a random kid.
Well, at least Guts got the father too.
Guts did pull off the actual assassination.
So next time you don't want to hire these two, just get Guts with his big ass sword.
Guts for sure would have got Aemon.
Guts would have got Aemond and the entire goddamn half castle.
Yeah.
Guts is bullshit. If he was in Westeros, he'd be the most powerful fucker around. No question. But anyway, so they find Helena, and kids are pretty heavy sleepers, thank God.
Yeah,
And,
as well as all the guards.
Yeah, but also I can't tell which one they are. It's 2024. I can't assume a gender. So and then she just says, "Look at it. Look for a cock." And Blood's like, "Nah, that's gay. You tell us which one's the son."
Yeah.
And Helena, and I do not like this. I really do not like this. Like, she offers her necklace, and like I don't, and that's it. And then she just points to her son. Like, I want more from this. I want her to do everything. I want her to offer her necklace. I want her to offer her life. I want her to offer her body. I want her to do everything reasonable for her to keep both her children alive. I just don't feel like we get that here.
Yeah, maybe having her at least be like, "Kill me instead," even if they immediately go no. That'd be worth something.
I don't know. Like, she just...
But in the books, is she as severely autistic as she is in the show?
No, there's no hinting at any retardation in the books.
I didn't say retard. I said autistic.
Yeah, same thing.
There's a difference.
Because
yeah, that to me, it's like she's so. Again, I think autistic is just like the right way to describe it. She's so autistic that like she's just. I don't know. She definitely could have done more, but I didn't see this as being too wild for her character.
I don't know. I'm not a fan. I want more from her in this place. But then, like, the weird thing is, once Cheese, like at first, Blood's all like, she'd never give up the daughter that easily. Obviously, it's the other one. And Cheese kind of just looks into her eyes and like, no, it's true. She's telling truth. And then they go kill the son. But I want to go back to a little bit. Like, first off, how does Cheese know that, like, she's telling the truth? I guess it's just the way she's looking at him or something. But I've seen, like, some disgusting ideas online of why she gave up the son like that. And it was just like, she knew that the son didn't want to be king or some shit like that. And so death was better. I don't know. My opinion on these people are very, very small. But something that bugs me even more than that is once she's like kind of confirms, like, okay, yeah, she's telling truth. That's the son. They just let her go. And,
yeah,
and they start.
Do they both have to go stab the son?
Like
that's crazy.
Now, I haven't been giving a whole lot of praise for this, but the one thing I do want to is just the muffled screaming and the sound of the blade going in. Like, it is so disturbing and messed up. Like,
yeah,
that was done fantastically. But I'm still not going to excuse them turning their backs to Helena and allowing her to just pick up her daughter and fuck off. Like,
yeah, that's crazy.
Because they don't know how autistic she is.
I don't know. They got a pretty good sample in the last minute.
She could pick up her daughter, run out, and then just start screaming for anyone.
No, because you can see clearly the castle's completely empty.
Which is bullshit!
There's not a single other person in the castle.
So she spends a minute on screen time. We don't know how long she was actually doing this, but she's running away with her daughter to Allison's room where she's riding Kristen Cole's rod. And she just goes and sits in a corner and goes, very calmly, "They killed the boy." Which I also don't like. Not, "They killed my son." They killed the boy. What the fuck? I get she's like autistic and there's like something a bit quirky up there, but are autistic people really like that? Will they not like scream for help when their children is getting his head removed? Will they not scream for help when they feel they're in danger? Like, I don't know.
No, I think autistic people. I don't have a good joke to make out of this.
Like, I'm not going to call myself an expert on people with autism, but I work with a lot of people who have like mental issues, and I cannot see a lot of them. And just to be clear, these people have mental issues far worse than simple autism. We're talking about serious mental disabilities and whatnot. I can't see a lot of them reacting like this in any way. Especially being quiet. They're usually not quiet normally.
Yeah, it might be a little weird. But have you considered that she's also autistic oracle who can predict the future?
Fuck off! I don't.
So that adds some layers.
I mean, I guess, but was Bran that? Yeah, Bran was kind of stupid as well.
Bran was pretty tizzed out.
Yeah, but I hated that too. I don't like either of them.
Yeah, I guess Game of Thrones, the writers really like anybody who has like future knowledge is just crazy autistic. Just like unimaginably.
So yeah, if there was no source material for this, I'd probably be a little more forgiving. I'd still think it was dumb though, but because there is source material, and the source material is so good compared to this, especially, I do not like it. I think they very much dropped the ball here and made changes that did not have to be made.
Yeah, it would be better if they had just tied her up and then just killed the son and then that was the end. Mm-hmm. I think that would make a lot more sense.
Yeah, tie her up, gag her, have her watching in horror as they kill the son, and she's screaming into the gag and struggling like, fuck me, man.
Yeah, and then also have guards. Please have guards in the castle.
Like, yeah, like, you have a couple of guards throughout. They just don't pull blood and cheese over because they think they're rat catchers. Have them kill a couple of guards that were with Helena. Like, have blood, cut them down really quick and efficiently. And...
yeah.
I don't know. Like, I was going into this... Like I said, I didn't have the best opinion of House of the first season. I was actually going into this second season with a little more hope, because my issue with the first is that they tried to force in spectacle when it wasn't needed. So I thought here they don't have to force in spectacle. But now the spectacle that they're adapting is just shit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. They finally got to the spectacle that they'd been shoving down our throats unnecessarily before, and now it just doesn't make any sense.
Anyways, that's the end of the episode. So, at the end of it, I can say, obviously there was some good stuff. Funny enough, I think some of the better stuff was show only scenes because they cannot adapt to save their life. Man, I'm almost tempted to ask for D&D to come back. Whatever my issues with them are, at least they're fantastic adapters.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I feel like the nature of this show is you got to do a lot of original content mixed in with the adapting.
But even then, some of the original content D&D did in the first 4 seasons were good. It's weird. They're good adapters, and they're good in filling cracks for some things. But when they're wholly on their own, that's when they can't do anything. So maybe Fire and Blood is the perfect book for them to do, because there's enough info for you to go off of, but some gaps that you can have fun filling it in.
Yeah, until they get another Star Wars deal.
Yeah. Thank God that was canceled.
Yeah.
Honestly, though, with how the Star Wars shit has been going...
Yeah, they couldn't do worse. They couldn't do worse than what Star Wars is putting out.
That's like a question of the century. What's worse, Season 8 of Game of Thrones or some of the shit that Star Wars has been churning out?
I mean, Season 8 of Game of Thrones is horrible, but it's not just full-blown cringe.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't quite have that aspect about it. The power of one, the power of two, the power of many. Oh, Jesus.
I don't even know what you're referencing.
It's something from The Acolyte.
I've been
enjoying.
I've been avoiding
that.
I've been avoiding The Acolyte.
But anyways, final thoughts. I'm not super impressed with this episode. It definitely makes me more worried than I already was about other scenes and moments coming up. And I don't think by the end of this season I'm going to have the best of opinions of it. I think I'm going to treat it like season 5 or maybe more like season 6. There were some cool moments. It was all stupid though.
Yeah, I came in to this conversation thinking it was a pretty mediocre episode, but I'm leaving the conversation thinking it was a pretty bad episode.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's about all we can cover. We've obviously gone through every single scene. We've laid our complaints. We've laid our praises. Is there any particular thing you want to tackle before we end this?
No, I think we've covered all the stuff I wanted to talk about.
Alrighty. Well, everyone who made it to the end, thank you so much for listening. I hope you all have a wonderful day. And hey, if you want, make sure to check out DJ Fella's YouTube channel, because I'm positive in the next 4 years he'll have one video on there.
That's a bold statement.
I'm going to be more stubborn on you. I'm going to be on your back a bit more about this stuff.
Oh yeah, stay on my ass.
Alrighty. Everyone, have a good night. Be safe.